how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 234, and I had a conversation with Melody Guy. She suffered a brain injury that was quite traumatic and happened in the craziest way. I want to give a trigger warning for this episode because we also talk about sexual abuse, and I know that that's an issue, of course, for people, and just want to give a heads up so that you are prepared to hear that information. It's not gory details or anything like that, but it does come up. I want to remind everyone again that I'm recording the next few weeks of preambles for the podcast ahead of time. I'm doing them all in one day, so I do not know the outcome of the election, and this episode, of course, is going to come out after the election. I have a high-level anxiety about the whole thing. I'm just trying to get through to the other side. But I'm going to go and see my family, and that's going to be really great. And I'm going to be, of course, I've taken one COVID test already. I've got another one scheduled, and then I'll be able to see my parents. I'm excited about that. In other news, I don't know if I mentioned this last week, but my dad's third book in the Margaret Pirate series is out on Amazon under Martin March, and this one is called The Pirate's Apprentice. So book one was Outrageous Fortune. Well, technically it's Margaret Outrageous Fortune. The second one is Benediction and Blood, and then this, again, is The Pirate's Apprentice. So if you're into adventure books, women leads that are strong, definitely check it out. I also want to mention that on November 15th from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., I'm going to be moderating a great group for the Seattle Film Summit. The summit itself runs November 2nd through the 22nd. If you are interested, which there's a lot of really great information for all levels of the film industry and television industry, go check that out at seattlefilmsummit.com and get all the info you need to sign up and watch. On Zoom, you can see all the panels, so you won't have to even worry about, how you go to events and you're like, I can't be everywhere at once. What I'm going to do, I have to pick my favorite things. In this case, you get to see all of it, which is very cool. So check that out. In other news, social media, Hey Human Podcast is on Facebook, Instagram, and Susan Ruthism, that's my personal one, is Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can reach me, Susan, at heyhumanpodcast.com. Rate and review Hey Human on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. It's really helpful for the algorithms. Please, if you enjoy the show, take the time and give a review. I really, it would be great if you did that. There is now a storefront at heyhumanpodcast.com where you can get Hey Human merch that I have designed. And there's, a handful of things, and it really helps support the show. So definitely check that out. SusanRuth.com if you want to learn more about my other artistic endeavors. And also you can sign up on the mailing list there. Check out the links page on heyhumanpodcast.com where I put information about every week's guest. So I want to bring up again, last week I had Dr. Jack Brown, and he was talking about some body movements. He's a body language expert, and I recorded that section visually, and it's on YouTube, under my YouTube, so definitely check that out if you want to see what he was talking about. And there's a couple minutes during the whole of the episode where he gives a visual representation. So if you missed that I said that last week's preamble, now you're hearing it. If you skip through the preamble, then I don't know what to say. You won't know. But I'll keep letting you know for the next couple weeks at least. Okay, that's about it. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. Be kind, be well, stay safe. Here we go. Melody Guy, welcome to Hey Human.
Hey.
Thanks for being here.
You.
You too. You look great.
Oh, thanks.
You and I met actually quite a long time ago, I feel like, in music circles. And I keep up with you here and there on the old Facebooks. Here and there, I see you in my feed and obviously know what's going on for the most part. Although the thing that I want to talk to you about today took me by surprise when I read it. I had no idea. And we'll get into that. And okay. I'm really looking forward to talking about that because it was wild. and probably is still wild. But I want to start actually with you as where you came from and that kind of thing. So where did you grow up?
Well, I was born in Portland, Oregon, and then we moved to Simi Valley when I was about 3 years old. My parents were printers, and I started singing when I was about 5 years old. I was listening to the big record players, that were under this. It was under the stairs, and I would sit there with Judy Garland and Patsy Cline and Three Dog Night, and I would try to sound like them. I'd put my hand up to my ear. And so I was born melancholy. So I think I really identified with that music. So,
did you have a musical family, a creative family?
My dad played. His name was Bobby Joe Guy. And he had made a couple of 45s. And so his first one, he didn't know that he needed 2 songs to put on a record. So he wrote the second song out in front of the record company in 20 minutes, and they played it, and it was awesome. But yeah, so I would play. My dad would have me sing "Stop the World and Let Me Off," Crazy, and anyway, so he helped me learn how to play as well. He would say, "Get your daddy another beer and I'll teach you another song." So that's how I learned how to play guitar.
That's a country song in and of itself, I think.
Yeah, it is. I wrote a song about him a year after he passed away, and it's called "When He Wasn't Drinking." And Melanie Sofka, you know Melanie, I've got a brand new pair of, she's singing harmony on it. And it still kills me. It just, it's awesome.
That's a lovely tribute. Is your mom still with us?
Yes, Mom is still alive, and she is living in Portland, Oregon. My kids, everybody lives in Portland, Oregon, and I live in Spring Hill, Tennessee.
Yeah. Spring Hill is where I got my dog Mikey, who has passed away since, but that's where he came from. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I rescued him in Spring Hill. It's good.
Nice.
Yeah. You, before the internet's got all wonky there, you said that you grew up in a publishing family. Was that music publishing or print media?
It was actually newspaper. My dad was a prep manager for the Herald Examiner. And and then my mom also she was the fastest typer I've ever seen in my life. She was amazing, and she ended up having like this really high-powered job at Xerox, and then this French company would travel all over. And so I was a big fan of the strength that she exhibited, going out there as a woman, getting it done with all the sexism and all this stuff that goes on, especially back then, Yeah,
I was just going to say back then, and more than anything, that's a feat in and of itself, I think. How long have you been in Nashville?
I moved here in 2005, but I had been coming since 1997. So I had gotten married. Okay, I got kidnapped at gunpoint when I was 19.
What?
Yeah, it was in the Valley, actually. It was on Oxnard Street in Sherman Oaks. And he took me, put a gun to my head. It was a long experience, but
whoa, before you go on, what happened? You can't just be like,
well, by the way, I got kidnapped at gunpoint and the sky is blue. But so I went there to pick up my friend for beauty school, because I went to beauty school, and so she didn't answer the door when I knocked. It was where her boyfriend rented a room, and so when the guy opened the door, it was this guy I've never seen there before, and he put a gun to my head and said, "You're coming in." So it was like a 24-hour or longer ordeal, and it was mentally abusive and strange. But I watched Policewoman a lot back in the day, and she had this cool demeanor. I just kind of like emulated what Angie Dickinson would do. What would she do, So I just kept my mouth shut, and I was, not real emotional. I just went into shock kind of thing, and eventually the guy had drugged himself, and his friend made a deal with the police that my mom was all wired for sound, and they dropped me off, and they said run this way, and then I was in Westwood, and there's a lot of cops that just like in the movies, right? And then my mom ran out, and I told them, I'm like, get me out of here. It's like they said they were going to kill me. So I told them the story, but they let the guy out within 8 hours. They said, do not pursue this. It's not worth your life.
So was he a drug dealer or something, and you happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't even think he knew what he was doing. I think that he was just rolling with his high. I don't know, but it was strange. And I tried to get on with my life because I had to. No therapy, no nothing. You just shocks, stay alive. You know what I mean? And so I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do any drugs because I've always had to stay alert from day one when I was a kid. And I'm just a nice person, and I just love people, and I am always still shocked when people do crappy things, when people are abusive or whatever. And I think that has gotten me into trouble in the past of being too trusting and watching too many romantic comedies. Yeah. Someday my prince will come,
After being kidnapped at 19, I would think that would absolutely taint your vision of the world.
Yeah. And that's just the beginning of the story. That's the thing, is that you would think if I was smart enough, I would have been able to see the signs. And that's something that I went through EMDR therapy, and I used there was 10 big things that I attacked that day in the session, because I could only afford one session. But that was one. Abuse when I was a child was another one. Some real, my grandmother said to me, "You're fat." That was another one. Just when somebody says one thing and it keeps with you in your spirit, and you're just like, I'm this, I'm not that, but you struggle with it. And I'm like, I don't care. Now I don't care. But I feel like sharing my story or stories helps other people that have been through it, because I would have liked to have known in all of these instances that I was not alone. I have felt like that my whole life, that no matter how many people were around me that said that they cared about me, that they couldn't actually come through with the goods when it mattered,
Yeah. What was the child abuse stuff? Can you talk about that?
I was sexually abused by somebody I knew when I was little. And so that was 9 to 11. And then I was beaten up quite a bit by the person, and emotional abuse. And then so it was damaging in the way that I always thought that it was my fault. And any time that it happened, it was my fault. And then but with EMDR, it's just like the sky is blue. This happened. EMDR, after all these years, I got it 3 years ago. It erased the pain away from it. So I no longer feel that is a trigger for me, or any, it happened. But I feel like telling the story, like I said before, can help other people. Like, this is not a death sentence. Just because something happened to your physical body does not mean that your spirit has to absorb it or feel that strange hatred for yourself. And that's what it was, is a strange kind of, it must be me. I'm tainted. and then I went to the Mormon church, and my sister had joined the Mormon church. And so I wanted to have a perfect buttoned up life like she did for the moment. She had it for a moment. Didn't last. So when I went in and told, because another instance had happened, I grew up in Simi Valley. So Simi Valley, there was a lot of weird stuff going on in that town. I love my old schoolmates and stuff, but it's just like there's a lot of weird things. It all looked good from the curb, but it was super painful.
Can you explain to the listeners what that technique is that you did?
Eye movement desensitization reprocessing. So what they do is you bring up that horrible, painful thought, like somebody said you're fat, and it sticks with you and you hate yourself forever. So she says, bring that up, and you think about it, and then you put that memory on the train station platform. You get in the train, and you watch this LED lights go back and forth. And she says, as soon as the lights start, you just go on the train. So you're thinking about whatever comes to your mind. If it's a bunny rabbit, so what it does, it gives that file too much information. So it disrupts the thinking in it. So you can't feel that emotion from that thing. And a lot of soldiers with PTSD have gone through it. And drug addicts, it really helps with drug addiction and, child abuse. And I just wish that more people knew about it, because it honestly saved my life. Because over the years I have been suicidal. What's the point? Nobody would miss me. It would be better if I was gone. But that's not true. So anyways, I found out from my first producer, who went through horrible car accidents, and his hip bone was like taken out, and he had to sit there till it healed because of MRSA. And I mean, he was laid up for years, and he had EMDR, and he was just happy. It's like, and so I'm like, I'll give it a shot. Why not?
Did the perpetrator of your childhood abuse, did they get caught?
I'd rather not say, but I have forgiven, and that's, yeah. So nobody really paid any price except me. So, and it's been a series, and you would think, sometimes I think about all of the things that I've been through, and I add them up, and people that know me go, how do you even not be a drug addict? How do you not go over the edge? And I'm like, well, if I'm sitting still, nothing's going to happen to me. Obviously, I've been living a lot of life. Do you know what I mean? So just like getting knocked out in a bar, or having the big brain injury, if I'm sitting still, if I'm not doing anything, then I'm not going anywhere and not learning anything. And so for some reason, my spirit needed to learn a bunch of lessons. And I don't think, now this is where, The Secret and everything, they're like, oh, you asked for these situations. That's baloney. I know I didn't ask for a lot of this stuff. So loving the wrong guy a couple of times, 5, you fool yourself. And that's on you, sometimes. But yeah, I just feel like I'm proud of myself for getting up and not accepting the diagnosis of, all this stuff happened to you, so you're going to have a shit life forever.
How did you get knocked out in a bar?
Okay, so I was playing at this bar, the Brass Rail in Portland, Oregon, and this lady had come in with her sister, and they were on like meth and drinking at the bar, and there's 30 people. Everybody was listening. They were clapping, and I'm like, yay, this is a great sharing experience, right? And the owner of the bar went up to her, the lady, and said, "Hey, all these people are here to hear Melody. She came from Nashville." And they started a fight back and forth. So first the owner got punched, and then they took it outside. And the owner had been in prison before, so she was she could, and so they called the cops, and then she said, "Don't let anybody in." And so this big guy who's like Hagrid, he was like big like Hagrid, right? So I just stood there because I just want to be a helper. And I stood there too, and I don't know why I did, but she came up to the door, and she just took her big fat fist. She looked like a short bodybuilder, and she knocked me out. So it moved my jaw, moved my teeth, and I'd had jaw surgery, upper and lower osteotomies. They broke my face and put it back together before when I was a kid because of a deformity, right? And so I was like thinking about, oh no, the screws, I'm gonna have that surgery again. But I was knocked out. So I saw green and white lights. I was down for the count. And I got back up, and somebody said, "Melody Guy can take a punch." and what I did is I got up and I sang for 2.5 hours so I would get paid. People were tipping. Then I went to the hospital.
Oh my God.
And they're like, "Yeah, you have a really bad concussion. Your bell got rung." And I was stuttering then too. So I had to recover from that. Then a couple years later, that was in 2013, then I had the experience.
Yeah, let's get into that. And also, Melody Guy Can Take a Punch has to be the name of your next record. And maybe even actually for sure this episode. Tell us about what happened, the experience as you call it.
Okay, so I was in the back of Bobby's Idle Hour, parked in my Chevy Astro van, and I was putting on my makeup because my friend Scott was doing a video shoot and just getting ready, and I was in the last parking spot, and there was an electrical pole that was about a parking space away, and all of a sudden I heard this explosion, and I grabbed my head, and I looked for blood. I think I was out for a second, but I thought that my head got blown off, and everything that wasn't protected by the seat, like I had a really bad neck ache. My window was open, unfortunately, and but the blast was, and you could hear it for blocks around. I mean, friends that told me later, they like hit the ground and they were walking on 16th Avenue. So people came out of the buildings, and I looked around and I thought that we were under attack. Because it was the same day that Manafort got arrested. And those guys, right? So I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I grabbed my purse, ran into Bobby's, and I looked back, and there was fire, and the lights were out in Bobby's, and I saw the fire, and I moved my van, and then within a half an hour, I lost any semblance of regular speech. My friends were saying, "You've got to go to the hospital. You need to go to the hospital." They didn't take me, but they're like, "You need to go to the hospital."
Why didn't they take you?
Music friends, right?
Oh man! But so did you know that the transformer above you had blown up?
Yes, I knew that because I saw it on fire, and I called NES because they told me, my friends had told me that you need to call them, tell them you were hurt, and so I did. And I told them that there's something wrong with me. I'm sure I said other words, but I don't remember. But they gave me some numbers or something. And I went to the clinic towards my house. So I don't even know how I got there. And that's scary. But they said, when I got there, they said, "We can't treat you. We think you have bleeding on the brain. You need to go to the hospital. Do you want us to call an ambulance?" And the funny thing is that I had a brain injury. So how could I make decisions for myself? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you didn't have a friend with you or anything?
No, I'm super independent, but so I called my friend. I'm like, hey, and then I put him on the phone with the doctors, and he's like my brother. So he took me to the hospital, and they kept saying, your bill is wrong. I was saying stuff like, I'll be okay. I'll be okay. Just shake it off. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. But I wasn't fine. But I was saying weirder stuff than that, but I can't. But I do know that it took at least a month and a half before I could sing. Speaking was not good. But I mean, I sang one song and my head was burning for 2 months. Nobody came and helped me. My friend Joe Johnston, who's a pretty famous publisher, writer, and stuff, he called somebody who lived in my town, and she came, and she brought me peanut butter cookies and a casserole. But, I mean, she was busy, but nobody understands brain injuries. They're just like, oh, your head's okay. There's no blood coming out of it.
So what do they think happened when the transformer blew? Was it like a mortar blast in a way that it gave you a concussive?
Yeah, blast wave concussion. So the blast, I spoke to a guy who got blown up in the war, and he said, we have the same thing. He's like, it's like a bomb. It's like 40,000 volts, or I don't know how you put it, but it was, the power from the blast does damage to soft things like your brain.
Yeah.
So it racked me, and the power from the blast moved me forward. I don't remember hitting my head, but I could have. I know that the way that they were talking to me in the doctor's appointment with the neurologist, he says, it's just, there's nothing we can do. We just have to see where it ends up.
Wow.
So he's like, stay in a dark place, no light, no phone, no, just cognitive rest. They didn't give me any pills other than which I think is wrong. They gave me like a high-powered acetaminophen. So I'm like Advil or whatever, ibuprofen. So that can cause your blood to thin. That's not good. If you have bleeding in the brain, and it's microbleeding. So,
which doctor did you go to? This sounds like a terrible doctor.
It was St. Thomas, somewhere over at St. Thomas in Nashville.
Had lightning struck, or did the transformer go on its own?
What they said at NES is they said a squirrel got in between the lines and started this, that all it takes is a small animal to spark, to do an arc. But there was a big transformer that blew up that same day earlier downtown. And it was like a big one. But this was on a pole with 2 fuses, and there was fire. So it's just remarkable that they wouldn't help me. And so I lost out on, a couple of $1,000s of work, and I support my adult son who's in the autism spectrum. And so it was a drag. But then again, with all these life experiences that I've had, I'm like, nothing is actually fair. Nothing is really fair. So I can't expect life to be fair in that instance as well.
How long did it take for your brain to get to is it still heading toward a place? This was how many years ago now? 3, 4, 5?
3 years.
3 years. Okay.
I still have dizziness when I do this. You know, I am not as steady on my feet. I have to, a lot of times, especially when I'm tired, I really need to concentrate on what other people are saying. And sometimes words don't hit my brain like they should. So I really have to work hard with communication, and then
frontal lobe damage. It sounds like you have. Yeah.
My neighbor across the street, he had come over to look at the paper patio I made, and he was saying something, and I started to, and then he mocked me, and I feel so proud of myself that I said, "Hey, wait a minute. I had a brain injury. It takes me longer to get my words out sometimes. And could you give me a break?" And he felt so bad. But still, anybody who's going to mock anybody,
yeah,
I have no time for anymore, especially the existing climate that we have going on.
Absolutely. Have you gone to brain specialists since this happened?
I don't have health insurance. I used to have Obamacare, but my income dropped below the mark for me to qualify for it. So I don't have health insurance. So I have no way of getting help. So I am scrappy, and I had to go out there. It was 3 months after it happened. I had to go out and do a tour for this new product in Guitar Centers, and thank goodness the people that I was going on tour with understood, and that I was dizzy, and that I sold more of this particular product, I won't say what it is, than any of the other artists that were doing it, even with this brain injury. So I'm amazing. I feel proud of myself that sometimes my personality, like I said, can I've got a sense of humor. So if I'm stuttering, I'm like, what are you gonna do? It's hard to be a person.
How did you take care of your son while you were recovering?
Well, my son lives with my mom, and I pay his rent. So he has health insurance in Oregon. If he lived here, he wouldn't have health insurance. Also, the school that he's going to is in Oregon, and I used to live there. But they like it better there. And I've had this house and kept it, renting out rooms and stuff, and going on the road. So this is the most I've been home in a long time. But and so, yeah, basically I just lived in my van 9 months out of the year and went back and forth from Oregon to here. And, I'm tougher than I give myself credit for sometimes.
How are you finding a way to support yourself right now when there are no touring musicians?
I started painting. Oh, this is the post-traumatic growth part, right? So my friend had given me a paintbrush and paint at a gig that I was playing at a resort. And she's like, "Hey, you want to paint with the kids?" I'm like, "Sure." And she goes, "That looks like Van Gogh." I'm like, "What does Van Gogh look like?" I don't know. And so I started painting, and then people were buying my paintings. So, and then we got some unemployment, and fans have, when I go on live, fans have been tipping, which is great. And they've really supported Robert in his GoFundMe, which is awesome.
Robert, is Robert your son?
Robert, my son. Yeah. He's so funny. He's the warmest, wonderful person. I just am so proud of him. Yeah. So he's almost there.
How old is he?
He's 28. And so when I mean almost there, he's almost going to graduate from this program. And so it's a web development school that he got kind of a scholarship to through Fidget Tech, which they help train autistic people for jobs.
That's great.
Yeah, they believe in him. But yeah, he was there when I got a standing ovation for Mistakes Like Me at the Ryman. He was younger then. That was in 2006, and I opened for Tanya Tucker. And it was awesome. He was like, spank you very much out in the crowd. He was taking bows. But like, that was an experience. And me personally, like if I got through the 8th grade, I mean, with the abuse that I survived and the learning disabilities that I have, I did not do well in school. But my skills are not school oriented anyway. You know, I think that I was trying to figure out the other day, and I posted online, I'm like, what are my skills? If I was going to apply for a job, what would my skills be? So this has gotten worse since the brain injury. So I can't do paperwork. Like there's a lot of grants that I could figure to apply for. I get overwhelmed doing paperwork. Reading is really difficult for me, but I can write songs, I can sing, I can paint, and I can make people laugh in a grocery store.
Different parts of your brain. Sure. Yeah. That's really always, to me, the most fascinating thing about the brain. Sometimes it figures out how to rewire places that are atrophied, and other times when those things are lost, the other parts of the brain spike in their capabilities, right? Which is how we get, let's say, savants.
Right. Yeah. So I never thought that I could do any art at all. And so every painting is different. And like I did this painting, it was like 3D flowers. I'm like, I don't even know how to paint a flower. This is awesome, you know?
Yeah.
And people have bought my paintings for like $200, $500. But that slowed down. The more this pandemic has gone on, the lower the tips are, the lower everything is. I did get that unemployment though, but I'm very frugal and very thankful. And I've sold a couple of things to keep going.
And you have tenants in your house?
I used to, but now I do not. Because you can get it, you know, through the air. And
you mean COVID? You're talking about COVID? Yeah.
And they were not as careful.
Okay. Now, is your son's father in the picture? Is he a part of his caregiving?
No, not at all. Actually, he's anti-care.
Okay.
He didn't allow me to play music for 10 years when I was married to him. And so he was an alcoholic, and he was very mentally and emotionally abusive. And so when I divorced him, that was the best thing I could have done for the kids. But of course, they questioned my thinking because the present parent is the one who gets all the, you know, the hate for things that didn't go their way. But now they get it. Robert had talked to him just recently, and actually his father had said that, called him the N-word, standing in line waiting for a handout, and he's disabled.
Wait, hold on, I'm confused. The Robert's dad called Robert the N-word?
Yeah. And it's something that he's said before, you know, welfare baby, and just mean things, which it's crazy, absolutely crazy. But he is, this is the guy who drank 18 beers a night and huffed glue, but was making $200,000 a year. You know, it's been an interesting life, but I also never wanted the kids to hate him. And so I've always tried to say, oh, he's just busy or whatever. But this really broke, you know, and I said, you know, Robert, you never have to speak to him again. We don't need his help. We'll figure it out. We'll just figure it out. Because my love for my son is just
Yeah. And you have other children as well?
I do. My daughter Delaney, she is a singer-songwriter, pole athlete. She has a band called Sit Pretty, and she also had a adult comedy duo, Delaney and Paris. And there's words that they sing that I can't even write down. It's pretty as a picture, and she's multi-talented, and she's really a great girl.
You say pole athlete as in pole dancing?
Yes.
Yes. Cool. I've interviewed a pole dancer on the show. It is definitely athleticism at its peak.
Oh, you should totally interview Delaney.
Fascinating. I watched I guess it would be the pole dancing Olympics, although that's not the name of it, and it is mind-boggling what these people can do with their bodies.
Delaney has also done contortion. Freaky. I'm like, don't do that anymore. I think you're, but she's just really athletic, and the beauty of the pole dancing is just, it's just gorgeous. It's really gorgeous.
It can be really quite stunning. I like the contortionists too these days. So many horror movies use contortionists for their scary moments of, the creepy backwards walking down stairs or crawling out of television sets or whatever.
Delaney can do that.
Yeah. I mean, there's a career there for people like that. So what is on the agenda for you moving forward?
Well, during the pandemic, when it first started, I recorded a song called Human Connection, and that was on the news. So I've been productive with music there, and then I've written a bunch of songs, and I'm going to try to record them and then send them out virtually to people to play on, like I did that one, and try to create an album. We don't know what's going to happen. Who knows? And I'm hoping for the best, and I have a positive attitude. And I just got to keep reminding myself, everybody's feeling the same thing, I think. And we're all like, what? And hopefully we can get this under control. And I've been working on my van. So I'm making a new ceiling in my van. So when I go back out on the road, it'll be more warmer and cuter.
Nice. How can people find you?
melodyguy.com. I have like 7 albums on there and videos, or on my Facebook, Melody Guy Music, or my Instagram, Melody Guy Music.
Perfect. Melody, thank you for sharing your story, and I wish you much success and healing, especially.
Thank you.
I think it's important to share these kinds of stories, as you mentioned, because so many of us are going through things, and it's helpful to hear that we're not alone.
Yeah, that's a big thing. I know that it was hard for me thinking that I was. So the more I hear from other people, it's like, see, we're all here together, right?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Rate Hey Human on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks. Bye.